name is Marina. I'm a tour guide in Saint Petersburg, and let's have a little chat today about mass vaccination in Russia. Hello, my name is Marina. I'm a tour guide in Saint Petersburg. It's January 2021 and there's mass vaccination going in Russia, so it made me think about the very first vaccine in our country. I don't know if you guys are against or pro-vaccine, but no one can deny that vaccination is the greatest discovery of mankind. It is vaccination that made it possible to lower the number of deaths by hundreds from seemingly incurable diseases back in the past. And back in the past, obviously, smallpox was one of the worst diseases. It reached Russia in 1427. This was the year when it was first mentioned in the documents. Smallpox killed at least a third of the sick, and the ones that survived were left with horrible scars on their faces. So when you look at those 18th century portraits of those beauties, the artist had to lie. They all had pock marks. Smallpox did not spare anyone, even the kings and emperors. Our very own emperor, the grandson of Peter the Great, young Peter II, who was only a 14-year-old boy, he died from smallpox, despite the unprecedented quarantine measures that the court created back then. So Peter II died at 14, being unmarried and childless, thus ending the direct male line of Peter the Great. So this was 1730, and by 1768, smallpox spread all over Russia, reached Kamchatka, killing 65% of their population. It was terrible, but the methods that they used to treat smallpox were quite frightening as well. So the inoculation method back then was so-called variolation. You needed to inject. You needed to take the pox vesicles from a sick person and inject it into the arm of the person who's being vaccinated. So the person would suffer from smallpox mildly and then recover and never get sick again. Well, of course, people injected this way died too, but 20 times less. This method was actually discovered by Turks, and it was researched by English doctors who first tried the variolation method on criminals, then on orphans, and when all the subjects survived, they moved on to the royal families. But it was very different in Russia, because in Russia the first person that was inoculated from smallpox was the Empress herself, Catherine the Great. So this was 1760s. The smallpox got really close to the court, and Catherine was terrified of it. I've mentioned Peter II dying from it, and Catherine's husband himself, Peter III, though he recovered from smallpox, Catherine never forgot his scarred face that shocked her the day before the wedding. Catherine the Great was only 39 years old. She was young, full of charm. She refused to live in fear, so she studied this issue very deeply and chose the best healer in England back then. This was the doctor whose name was Thomas Dimsdale. So in the summer of 1768, Thomas Dimmesdale arrived to Russia to inoculate Catherine the Great. There were a lot of people infected in the court. It was impossible to hesitate. So they found a 6-year-old boy who suffered from smallpox. His name was Sasha Markov. So he was brought to the palace. His infected lymph was injected into Catherine's arm, and the next morning she moved to one of her summer estates, Tsarskoye Selo. First, Catherine didn't feel any complications. Dimmesdale studied her condition very carefully. He kept a diary. Later it would be a book named The Current Way to Inoculate Smallpox. So later Catherine developed chills, fever, the first poke marks appeared, then they swelled, darkened. Dimmesdale was really excited. Finally, a week later, Catherine felt completely cured. She was completely cured, people were notified about it, and several days later she ordered to have her son, Grand Duke Paul, to be inoculated right after her. The boy, Sasha Markov, he recovered from smallpox too. He was later given a noble title, coat of arms that depicted a bare arm, and he also received a prefix to his surname, Smallpox. Dr. Dimmesdale received a title of the Baron and a life medic title as well, plus an impressive life pension. Catherine, having decided on such a risky experiment, won and showed a brilliant example to her subjects. It was entirely her initiative, but when everyone praised her, she used to say very humbly that she showed as much determination as every boy in England. So Russia has become a leading country in the field of vaccination, and when French King Louis XV refused to get vaccinated and died from smallpox, Catherine thought it was barbaric. After the recovery from the vaccination of Her Imperial Majesty Catherine the Great, the ballet was staged here in Saint Petersburg. It was called Defeated Prejudice. So you may think it was an unprecedented PR campaign, but Catherine the Great actually took a risk, and all the elite and major people in the court followed her. She truly impressed her contemporaries and also strengthened her authority and power. Later in 1796, a safer vaccine which was based on cowpox was developed by another English doctor. I forgot his name, Edward Jenner. Sure. Later in 1796, a safer vaccine which was based on cowpox was developed by another English doctor, Edward Jenner, and Catherine's grandson, Alexander I, would continue spreading the vaccination in the country. The cow actually became a savior in the war against smallpox. It was then that the actual term vaccine appeared, and it's not a coincidence because in Latin the word vaccinus means a cow. Realize there's nowhere to go. There's the thing we're searching for. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you liked the video. It's such a great example for all of us to see who are the first people that have to be vaccinated in our countries. See you next time. Take care.
But you also had your coffee.